Good evening, everyone, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming to the May 12th Vision Zero Advisory Committee meeting. Want to get started. We did have a roll call sheet up the front table. Austin will make sure you get signed into that later. We do have a quorum at the moment. I do know a couple of folks that won't be attending per usual. Some may be joining us as we get going. All right. First roll is approval of the April meeting minutes, and I wanted to ask if anybody wants to. Thank you, Hal. If anybody had a chance to look at them, any questions, concerns, motions to approve?
Motion to approve.
Okay.
Second that.
Second the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, fantastic. Next thing that we are going to move into after the approval of minutes is public comment. We did not have a public comment form today, but as always, we invite anyone that is here with us at the meeting that is compelled to speak to just kind of raise your hands and come forward. We'll address you. Hey, Kobe. Kobe, did you want to speak first? Or
we're going to do public comment.
You're doing together. Perfect.
Okay.
Come on up. And just as always, for the sake of everyone's knowledge, if you can just share your name and title and whom you're here with.
Yeah, Cody Langner, livability planner with NDOTS, and I'm here joined with Meredith Montgomery, just to let you all know about Open Streets downtown this week. So we're excited to partner with Walk Bike Nashville on this event again, and would love to have you all there. And I'll let Meredith speak more to the details.
Awesome. Thank you. Did you do that? I didn't know we were going to have a map. Thank you. Yeah, first I just want to say thank you to you guys, to this committee. Thank you. Just for the time and the care that you put into this work. And I know it's been an especially hard time to be in this space in light of the amount of lives lost in recent weeks and the upward trend for the year. And without discounting the seriousness of the tragedies occurring on our roads throughout our city, I do want to bring attention to the softer side of Vision Zero tonight, and that's Open Streets, which kicks off, like Kobe said, on Saturday from 10 to 2. In partnership with NDOT, we are opening 1 mile loop of downtown streets to people by temporarily making them car-free. And this year's event also doubles as the Tour de Nash after party. So what I want to point out is that, yes, Open Streets is a Vision Zero initiative. By eliminating conflicts with cars, Open Streets serve as a living laboratory for Vision Zero principles. This event demonstrates that when our streets prioritize human life over moving cars, they become vibrant, inclusive, and safe public spaces for all users. Lives are saved, communities feel a greater sense of connection, local economies thrive, and people of all ages and abilities experience the independence that they deserve. So Open Streets also allows residents to experience the comfort and safety of navigating our city via a low-stress, connected walking and biking network. Our hope is that by hosting these events, we generate a public appetite and political will for permanent Vision Zero infrastructure improvements within our multimodal network. So I invite you all to join us downtown this Saturday and help us spread the word. We'll also host Open Streets on June 13th and July 11th. Those are all Saturday dates, and they will all be from 10 to 2. Registration is not required. Everybody is welcome. And I just have to remind everybody, Tour de Nash is this Saturday, and registration is required, and it is still open. But just thank you all for all that you do for the city, for this work, and I hope that you know that Walk Bike Nashville is a partner and supports all of these efforts.
Thank you. Can I ask one question? Is the finishing connector of the Open Streets just kind of through the Ascend Greenway along First there?
So this map actually isn't accurate. It is a full, like a loop.
Yeah.
Is that what you're trying to clarify?
Yes.
So, yes, all of First all the way to Demumbrium is closed.
Okay.
But note that that's the pedestrian bridge. So to do the loop, you have to go underneath the pedestrian bridge to connect over by Hall of Fame, if that makes sense.
Yep. Okay.
And yeah, the green lines represent, there are several, greenways and the Commerce Bike Lane that connect to this. So if you want a longer route, longer than a mile, there's the connections to do that.
Awesome. Any other quick questions about these upcoming?
And maybe more for Kobe, but is the pedestrian bridge going to be done by then?
The raised crosswalk?
Yeah.
We will have it done by Saturday.
Okay. They were working hard out there, I just saw. Yeah.
We are ready.
Awesome. All right. Thank y'all. Open it up to anyone else that is interested in public comment this evening.
Thanks, Charlie. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah.
I'm Catherine McDonald. I'm the chair of BPAC, and I'm speaking today regarding the escalating public health emergency on our streets. Since January 1st of this year, 16 people outside of cars have been killed, including 5 in just the last 5 weeks. That's more than 3 times as many as there were at this point last year. These numbers are even more striking when you consider that statewide, traffic fatalities are down. In Knoxville, Chattanooga, and Memphis, overall traffic fatalities are actually reducing, while Nashville's continue to rise. But instead of treating this like the emergency that we should, $8 million have just been cut or reallocated from Vision Zero funding, and another $4 million is going to repave Gallatin without really any meaningful safety improvements. These deaths on our streets are horrific, they're heartbreaking, but they're not surprising. Since Nashville Next was adopted in 2015, we have repeatedly seen good plans be delayed, watered down, or thrown away. Almost 10 years after the first walk and bike plan was developed in 2017, only a fraction of the planned priority sidewalks and bikeways have been built. In 2018, bike lanes were installed on Cleveland Street, an identified priority bikeway, with broad community support. They were then quickly removed at the request of the district council member and have still never been replaced. In 2019, core bike lanes on 3rd and Commerce were fully funded and ready to be built, and were supported by a petition signed by over 2,000 people. Instead, the plans for 3rd were shelved after complaints from a few business owners, and a pilot poorly protected cycle track was built on Commerce Street, which now dead ends into oncoming traffic after a block was removed last fall. In 2020, East Nashville Spokes project was begun, and designs were finalized in 2024. To date, we still have nothing to show for this, no timeline for completion, no interim safety measures, and massively wide roads that I have to take my daughter on a daily basis. In 2022, Connect Downtown brought renewed hope that we might finally start to see some tangible progress on our streets. But once again, now that it comes time to implement that plan, we're failing, with recent updates showing less than half the number of planned mobility lanes to be built and more than twice the time. Finally, in 2024, after a series of public meetings, detailed designs were developed to transform Main and Gallatin, one of our most dangerous corridors where there have been almost 800 crashes in the last 3 years. Construction was supposed to be completed this year from 5th to Eastland. But instead, more public meetings were held 2 weeks ago, during which we learned that the planned design changes would now not be starting until 2030, and the street would instead be repaved this summer with some very marginal safety improvements. A few days later, Billy Ray Swainer was killed at Gallatin and Trinity. So this is why we're frustrated. This is why we're angry. And this is why people are still dying on our streets. Most of the projects I just mentioned are on our high injury network. These are places we know are dying. People are dying. But even on the streets we fully own, and even on the streets that we are designing and building from scratch, we are repeatedly failing to do anything to keep people safe. If we can't get it right here, where we have the plans, we have the funding, where we own the streets, how can we ever get it right on our pikes, where people are literally taking their lives into their hands just to try to cross the street? This lack of action is not due to lack of funding. We're not even spending the money that we have. This is due to lack of political will. Right now, there's overwhelming public support to build better infrastructure and make our streets safe. But that support will evaporate if we keep failing to implement our plans and failing to take the bold action that is necessary to save lives. So as I said at our BPAC meeting last month, please just build some good infrastructure and build it fast. We don't need any more plans. We don't need any more community engagement. We need action, and we need it now. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. I'll just follow it up with, in addition to the fatal crash that happened at Trinity and Gallatin that Catherine mentioned, there have been 2 other crashes between Trinity and Spain in the past 10 days that have closed traffic due to the severity of the crash. One of them today was with a 56 bus. So this is ongoing. This is serious. It needs to be addressed, and we have to do better. Plain and simple. We have to do better. Okay, thank you. Any other public comments this afternoon? All right. Wonderful. We are going to continue moving on with our agenda, and we will be talking fatal crashes from the last month, and hopefully some updates on other fatal crashes the past few months. So, Pira, thank you.
Sorry, technical difficulties.
Who's going to be at Tour de Nash?
I'll be at Open Streets.
Open Streets, that counts. Is at the party?
Trying to get a kid to go with me.
Bikes are cool.
Sweet nation.
All right. While they are working on getting that presentation sorted, I do want to just jump forward and talk about a resolution just surrounding the misuse and misappropriation of Vision Zero dollars. Quite clearly, we all are aware of everything that's been going on with money removed from NDOT's budget that was initially surplus funds that was allocated towards Vision Zero projects, as well as the entire budget for the upcoming Gallatin Main project coming from Vision Zero dollars. A vast majority of that being the repaving portion of it. I think it's pretty clear and apparent that repaving is not an adequate or appropriate use of Vision Zero dollars. It is not direct safety measures that will improve the safety of the roadway, the engineered roadway for, frankly, any users. Repaving, I imagine, will only entice people to drive faster. So just layers of issues with that. So this morning I did share a resolution to uphold Vision Zero funding integrity and prioritize life-saving infrastructure over routine maintenance. And I would like to, if you would allow me, take the privilege to read this, because I feel like it should be read explicitly. I'm getting nods. Okay.
Let's read it into the record.
Whereas the Metro government of Nashville has formally committed to Vision Zero, a strategy to eliminate all traffic fatalities and severe injuries while increasing safe, healthy, and equitable mobility for all. And whereas Nashville is currently experiencing a critical public safety crisis on its roadways, with 2026 trending toward one of the deadliest years in the last decade for pedestrians and bicyclists. And whereas, as of May 12th, 2026, there have already been over 40 people killed on Nashville's streets this year, with 6 fatal pedestrian crashes occurring in the month of March alone. And whereas recent victims of this crisis include Larry W. Smith and Herschel Trotter, who were killed while cycling, as well as Billy Ray Swainer, Yolanda Parham, and Cannon Oldham, who are killed while walking on Nashville streets. And whereas the Vision Zero Advisory Committee was presented with an extensive list of safety projects at its April 7th, 2026 meeting, with the understanding that this list would be provided for detailed review and prioritization by April 21st, 2026. And whereas this vital project list was never shared because on April 17th, 2026, the mayor's office directed the removal of $8 million in surplus Vision Zero funding to cover other budgetary shortfalls, effectively halting the progress of the discussed safety interventions. And whereas Vision Zero funds are specifically earmarked for high-impact safety interventions intended to protect vulnerable road users, yet the mayor's office and the Department of Finance have revoked these funds despite the rising death toll. And whereas Mayor Freddie O'Connell has further directed the Nashville Department of Transportation, NDOT, to use remaining Vision Zero funds for the comprehensive repaving of Main Street and Gallatin Pike corridor from South 5th Street to Briley Parkway. And whereas the expected cost of repaving Main Street and Gallatin Pike corridor from South 5th Street to Briley Parkway exceeds $5 million, and whereas the repaving project is being advanced with only meager safety improvements that are woefully inadequate, effectively prioritizing vehicle throughput and pavement management over life-saving infrastructure required by the Vision Zero Action Plan. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Vision Zero Advisory Committee of Nashville, Section 1, Preservation of Safety Capital. Vision Zero appropriations shall be strictly reserved for proven safety countermeasures. Under no circumstances shall Vision Zero funds be utilized for deferred maintenance or general repaving projects that do not result in a fundamental engineered change to the street's safety profile. Section 2, prohibited use for routine maintenance. The use of Vision Zero funds for the repaving of the Main Street and Gallatin Pike corridor is hereby deemed an inappropriate and unauthorized use of safety funds. Section 3, consequences of misappropriation and lack of transparency. This body acknowledges that the redirection of funds, the revocation of $8 million in surplus funding, and the failure to provide the promised April project list create a severe deficit in both safety and public trust. Consequently, a significant number of vital life-saving safety projects across the county will now be left undone and indefinitely delayed, leaving Nashville residents at continued risk. Section 4, restoration of critical funding and transparency. This body calls for the immediate restoration of the $8 million in revoked surplus funds to the Vision Zero program and demands the release of the project list originally scheduled for the April 21st VZAC meeting, as these are essential to address traffic fatalities on the high injury network. Section 5, protection over pavement. This body stipulates that the Vision Zero funding for the Main Street and Gallatin Pike project be restricted solely to safety enhancements approved by this body. Further, we advise that any portion of this project not explicitly safety-oriented must be supported by alternative infrastructure maintenance funding rather than depleting specialized safety reserves. Section 6, Safety First Accountability. Every project utilizing Vision Zero dollars must prioritize the safe system approach. Ensuring the safety of vulnerable users is the non-negotiable standard for design, rather than being secondary to vehicle level of service. Be it further resolved that Nashville must reaffirm its commitment to the principle that no loss of life on our streets is acceptable, and that our budget must reflect our priority for human life over asphalt maintenance. Any discussions, or would anyone care to motion? Peter. Yes.
The issue with allocated safety or Vision Zero funds is not a new one. It's not one that's just come up in this budget cycle. As the second year of Vision Zero plan, which would have been, I think, 2025, we saw a lot, almost a majority of Vision Zero safety allocated funds being put towards like light studies for like traffic patterns and things like that, which might have some ostensible limited ability to improve some safety, but were generally being used as a sort of a petty cash fund by the new NDOT to do other basic, traffic, management and things like that, which should not be appropriate. And I'm glad that this particular resolution would also sort of discourage that, because it shouldn't have happened then, and it definitely shouldn't happen now.
Yep.
To the extent that there is any reason for this committee to exist, and I think we have all probably asked ourselves that in our end of the rope moments, surely ensuring that Vision Zero dollars get used for Vision Zero principles is the most important thing we can do, and a ball that we should never drop, and something we should continue to push in on as hard as we can until it starts happening.
Correct. Any other comments, questions, proposed amendments? Motions?
Motion to accept?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thank you. Pira, thank you for your patience.
Thank you for your patience. We're looking at the fatalities for year to date and April 2026. As you can see, we had more than a third of all our fatalities for 2026 in the month of April. Total 15 crashes, 15 total fatalities, and 14 crashes. 3 of those were on interstate, 7 on state routes, and 5 on local routes. Further breakdown of the state and local routes. We had 4 vehicle-to-vehicle crashes, 3 pedestrian fatalities, 1 bicycle fatality, and 4 single vehicle fatalities. One of the multi-vehicle fatalities being a motorcycle, for a total of 12. And then for the year to date, we're looking at 42 total fatalities in comparison to 35 at the same time last year, for a 20% increase. We're up on pretty much all the categories. On interstate, we have 2 more than last year. On state routes, we have 2 more than last year. And then on local routes, we have 3 more than last year. And then the breakdown of the local and state routes, we have 1 more vehicle-to-vehicle fatality, pedestrians, we have 3 times as much as last year. Bicycle fatalities stayed the same, and single vehicles were the only category that went down in. We also had 5 motorcycle fatalities compared to, well, there were 5 at this time last year too, but for a total of 33 in comparison to 28.
Is there, I mean, does anyone have an explanation to venture on this side or on that side for a 200% increase in pedestrian fatalities? I mean, obviously the real issue here is that we have streets that permit at least 12 people to die in the first half of the year, right? But do we think that's random statistical variation, or do we think that something has changed with how people navigate the city?
I don't think there's been a significant change with how people navigate the city.
Does anyone from NDOT have any thoughts on that?
Not diminishing the ongoing crisis that I think we have, but the first 5 months of last year were particularly good historically. After June, looking at historic crashes, it did trend upwards for particularly pedestrians and cyclists last year. So comparing that now, we look to be doing 200% bad. That is still noting that we are on pace to match pedestrian and bicyclist deaths in our worst years, which were 2022 and 2023.
Cool.
So
I think it would be helpful if we talk about the pedestrian and cyclist crashes. It's hard to speculate about exactly why this increase has happened, but would love to discuss those cases in detail. Pierre, did you have some slides prepared?
Yeah. Yes. Are we looking at April or just year to date?
We were looking at April for the 3 fatal crashes that occurred.
So, okay, for April we had 3 pedestrian fatalities. There's one right next to the red dot on Lafayette.
So the fatal crash on Lafayette is the crash that killed both Yolanda Parham and Karen Oldham. Kanan, excuse me.
That's in March?
No, that was in April.
I had that on my birthday. It was particularly noteworthy.
There was one that happened in March.
Yes, there was one that happened in March. Yeah, very similar area, which is why it really increases the concern here.
Yes, this was another hit and run, as there have been countless hit and runs and pedestrian fatal crashes on this stretch of Lafayette. I know that we added a mid-block crossing, probably, I don't know exactly, 300 yards up the roadway a year or two ago. But I just want to underscore that simply adding a mid-block crossing of pedestrian hybrid beacon with a hawk, a refuge island, does not make a corridor safe. I do know that, some of the actual decent safety improvements that were going to be put on Gallatin, Maine later this year were basically 3 of those same mid-block crossings. But that treatment, isolated in and of itself, does not make a corridor safe for pedestrians. It makes the couple hundred feet surrounding that mid-block crossing safe.
I was just going to add, so do we not have, because we had requested to have slides to discuss this crash, the pedestrian and cyclist crashes this month, so that we could at least have some images of the site area and do a discussion, but is that available or is that not available?
Not at the moment.
Okay, so I think what would be helpful is if we could pull up Google Maps and look at the crash site, and then have a discussion. And I know the council member for that district, Councilmember Vo, is here in attendance and may have some things that she wants to share as well.
What's the cross street?
And Perry.
Which direction are we going?
It's like the Link Social Cantina.
That's about a half block east.
Or they were coming from the Link Social Cantina.
It's on the other side of the
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you can clearly see that this is a highway. Mm-hmm. It's treated like a highway. It's designed like a highway. As far as an area that is growing with pedestrians, growing with nightlife, growing with population and density and things to do, this is no longer going to be functioning as a highway, and it should not be designed that way. It needs dire engineering changes to force driver behavior to be different.
Just some notes here. So Yolanda and Kanan were at a neighborhood bar nearby, and they were crossing to get to their parked car. They both were parents, and they were together. So just some things to note that I think they were 28 and 32 years old, respectively. So they were very young people with young children, and this is a real tragedy. And there was, as Pierre had mentioned, there was that March crash nearby, and I feel like this definitely necessitates some sort of emergency or short-term action. I wanted to ask Councilmember Vo, did you want to say a few things?
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Terry Vo. I'm the District 17 Metro Council member. And we had a meeting with the community a few weeks ago, and I have some community members here tonight that attended with us. And we were able to get TDOT, NDOT, and partners there, and community members who live right at the intersection. And I do want to give y'all an update that TDOT will be restriping the crosswalks, the stop bars, and the turn arrows at this particular intersection. I've been following up with them weekly, and I know the request was in, and hopefully it'll be by the end of this month. Additionally, when we were talking with the community, we really want to address the lighting situation there, and then we also, if possible, the community asked for, installing speed limit signs. And then we were discussing what can we do with the smart signals, the smart crossings, and then also curb, making sure that the curb ramps are repaired. And community members wanted to also address, is tactical urbanism possible on this street? Is it possible? And so I have been following up with TDOT as well in the conversation, because we want to be very realistic. And I totally agree with what Charles was saying, that we really need to make this way more centered on pedestrians, because Tennessee Justice Center is just literally 3 buildings up, and people cross every day. On the way here, someone was in the middle of the road in the crosswalk with their family, but they were not, but the cars were going in the direction they were not supposed to be crossing the road, and I was very concerned for them. So that is a lot of what we discussed. I'm trying to make sure I didn't forget anything else. And, when we were discussing at the meeting, it was talking about 3 things for the roads, right? Engineering, education, enforcement. And so I've asked TDOT as well, what is enforcement happening? Why is THP, if people are speeding and they're crashing and running and hit and runs, where are they? If enforcement is, a third component of the safe road. So we've been asking the questions, and I've asked them for data on that, on what it looks like and what they've been doing there. And I definitely want to stay engaged and make sure that this road is improved. So many community members. We had a community safety meeting, and I know we're talking about Lafayette and Fairfield here, but Fairfield, Claiborne, Charles E. Davis, it's that whole strip. And I'll tell you, the pedestrian islands are on the other side. So one of them is by the school. Very grateful, thank you. But the biggest thing is, once you see businesses pop up, people are not walking, even if it's 100 feet, to a crosswalk. They want to cross directly over. And so I also asked about exploring, how do we create safe barriers that don't allow that to happen? And I don't know if there's better examples. I've been wanting to research that, but that's what I have, and happy to work alongside you all in solving this.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. One thing that I'm looking at this corridor on the Nashville Streetlight Retrofit Project from basically from the interstate north, kind of west, 40 down to Fairfield. There's about 18 lights that are scheduled for retrofit. Currently, of course, the website just says in the coming weeks. There's an entire surrounding area that has been done to the LED lighting. So there's kind of a mix of our old incandescent and LED lighting on this corridor at the moment. Hopefully that gets fixed soon, but I am certain that additional lighting is almost needed there.
One question I have, and Councilmember Vo, you might know better, isn't Lafayette Street the street that VZAC asked to have the speed limit reduced recently, and that was denied by traffic and parking?
It's currently being studied.
Yeah, we're
Okay.
data collection. We're just borough.
Okay.
Okay, because I would just note that, speed is always the number one factor in someone dying, and I know that it sounds like it was certainly a factor in this as well.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for being here.
Yes, thank you.
I'll add to what the CMO said. MMPD requested additional speed limit signs, and a work order has been put in for that, which will help in their enforcement. Speed limit here is 35, at least until after the railroad crossing. And then we're also adding additional no parking signs on both sides around the bar right there, so that it helps keep some of the people from parking there and crossing directly.
Do we think it would be possible to get the speed radar feedback signs instead of, because I remember when we had the LiDAR study presentation that said that They reduced super speeders by 30%. That was just a very effective way of getting people to slow down.
Sure.
We need to have like a million of those in the city.
Replace every speed limit sign.
Well, and I'm not joking.
Yeah, no,
and part of it is because, you know, I've been privy to conversations of one on Ewing, a corridor that we have been adamant has issues, and couldn't do traffic calming because of average daily vehicle travel. So they did a couple of small bulb outs, and they did a radar feedback sign, more or less. But the radar feedback sign has been out of commission for months now. And it's like, we need to have these on hand. If there's a problem and they're waiting on a component, go swap it out, right? Like, like that's an easy operational thing that we should be doing.
Well, and I think especially if there's a fatal crash, that's the first thing we should have out within 10 days or less.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to note here, there's a traffic count right at the bridge there from TDOT that says there's 18,000 trips per day along this stretch, and then if you look at the guidelines for federal highway and their like qualifications for a road diet, I mean, that's under the threshold. It's 20,000. So, I mean, this is kind of a no-brainer to me. It's just like the road diet is the solution. It's feasible. It's we actually, Gibb, who has spoken at a few of our meetings here, has some designs that he put forth. He sent them to me for the Civic Design Center, and we're going to put them out on our blog. But essentially, his idea was just eliminating the center turn lane, and I mean that would just create a pedestrian refuge island. It might slow the left lane a little bit, but probably won't have huge impact on traffic flow, and so that's my non-engineering opinion on that. So, yeah.
I mean, if it's under the threshold, it's under the threshold.
You're right.
Yeah.
We certainly follow the rule when it's over the threshold.
Yes. Yeah. And I mean, Jersey barriers.
I agree.
Drop them.
Have stacks of them.
We don't need to wait until there's a whole repaving of a road to close lanes or re-engineer the roadway in some significant manner. There's ways that we can do it. Okay.
Do you have anything else to say about this?
Not about this one.
Okay, so I just want to, I've heard a lot of good thoughts tonight. Councilmember Vo has shared some great community feedback. At our next meeting, I just want to set the expectation that we're going to get an update on any sort of short-term safety improvements that are being made from NDOT, if applicable. Thank you.
And then we did have 2 bicyclist deaths in April.
I'm sorry, if we could also, just to say, if we could also get an update on the lighting and when that lighting will be replaced specifically by next month, I think that would be really helpful.
I was a little surprised to hear that it hadn't been completely done there. The whole excuse of having been working like a clock face and working around would lead me to believe that by now we should have at least gotten this part of town, and I do not know why on earth it was not done yet.
If you look at the map, everywhere around it's green and done.
Yeah. I mean, I know we have had multiple bits that members of the committee and members of the community have identified that were then taken to NES to complete, and I know that NES is facing criticism for lots of things right now, but this is part of their obligation. It was my understanding that it was part of the contract. I've got questions out to NDOT about that and what we can do to encourage NES to do better, but that I don't know any good reason why that wasn't already upgraded.
Yeah.
In theory, we should be wrapping up like this year, right? for lighting. I mean, for most of Metro, like we should be, the upgrading process was supposed to have been done over, what, like a 3-year period, 4-year period? It'd be nice to have that done already.
Yeah.
Well,
and I'm a big fan of the improvements because it makes a heck of a difference. It's good.
yeah, and that could have helped here.
I'll jump in. We do have, I'll be talking about all this in the street lighting, so that's included.
We are fans.
All right. Let's talk. Yes, thank you, Piero. 2nd Avenue North in Junior Gilliam Way. This is where Larry W. Smith was killed when he was hit by a Ford F-350. This is just another road that is completely and utterly over-designed, too wide. The context of the neighborhood is changing. There's this absolutely crazy 180-degree slip lane that has the turning radius, has a greater turning radius than some interstate ramps. I think there are some efforts to get those removed, and I'll let others speak to that. But again, just a completely under-engineered, overbuilt part of what's our urban core that we have to address.
And I think one thing to note, and please update me if I'm wrong, is that the only witness to this was the driver of the F-350, and so it's really unclear what happened here. And there seems to be conflicting points in the police report where he says he saw the cyclist on the sidewalk, and then suddenly he was right in front of him, but he hadn't seen him coming, even though he had seen him on the sidewalk. So what also really frustrates me about this fatal crash is we have no idea.
And we will unfortunately likely
never have an idea. But I just want to say that we cannot give the driver of this F-350 the only narrative about what happened here, because one, that narrative benefits him, and two, driving an F-350
Yeah.
Well, I had a question, and Kim may actually know this because this is part of her neck of the woods, but when I have come through this corridor, and this was part of my daily commute for 2 years, it was pretty common that I would have preferred to use the Greenway, but it's been closed off and on for an awful lot of time right now. And I don't know, currently, can you even get through the Greenway? I was off just forced on the second.
2 weeks ago.
Yeah, it's currently open. And Hero, if you kind of pivot a little bit if you pivot a little bit to look towards the east, keep turning further, a little further, a little bit more. Sorry, so you're looking more towards the south here. So there's, compared to this now, there's a development there on the left-hand side, which is why the Greenway was closed.
Yeah.
For an extended period of time, past when it looked like it was finished, it was still closed while they were working on that building. In addition, there's an access point to the Greenway, the connector to the Sounds Greenway. That was also blocked by a fence for an extended period after the backside of it was open. But I worked with Councilmember Coopin to get that removed. So that is now gone and that is open. There were a lot of excuses about why it was still closed and a lot of challenges in getting it reopened. And then once it was reopened, critical maintenance on other parts of the Greenway had not been done. So community members went out and took care of that. But I agree with you completely. I had, in the months and months that this was closed, this was part of my commuting route on a daily basis. And I had numerous near-miss incidents along this corridor on 2nd Avenue heading north on that street. And it's just a situation where the road is not designed for the current uses of that area. And much like the Dot Dobbins death on 3rd Avenue, it's a situation where the population density of the area has changed dramatically. And we have not kept up with how the roads are designed, and much like we see in other parts of Nashville as well. So it's definitely a situation that, with the way that drivers are able to drive in this area, that it was not a surprise to me.
I think something to consider on the development that closed the Greenway, they're starting their next phase,
yes,
which we hope doesn't happen. And I don't know if you talked about that with the council member, but I mean, hopefully we learned some lessons from the first phase.
Mm-hmm. There's a giant pile of dirt sitting right behind where this was and where I guess the second part of the development will be. And we cannot allow that Greenway to be closed again. And I think to me, it's something that we need to discuss further in terms of greenway accessibility and greenways being closed for development projects for extended periods of time, because these greenways are vital transportation routes for our community members, vital parts of our safety network, safe places where people can actually get through and get around on bicycle and by foot. And this situation where we're allowing them to be closed for development has got to change.
We'll take that big pile of dirt and put it in the slip lanes.
There we go.
Truly.
Yeah.
And Eric, you had heard back from.
Yeah, and Holiday Properties owns the, the southwest corner of the slip lane there, and they have plans to develop, but they would prefer to develop to the corner, or where the corner might be, because it gives them more developable space. And they had plans that they said they were making progress with the city and I think NDOT on, and they showed them. I think I sent them to the group maybe.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean it seemed they only have the sort of the southwest quadrant of that loop there, so it would really just probably address the one side, but. If we're going to be doing, and then thinking about across the street with the second phase of that greenway, or the project that lines the greenway, like, could we get some infrastructure, could development support some infrastructure, right at that other, between those two projects, sort of the question.
But I think, frankly, the situation with that slip lane, it does really encourage drivers coming south to go fast, and it influences drivers who are continuing straight, not just the slip lane drivers.
Exactly.
Slip lane drivers.
Yeah.
And given the fatality here and other dangerous situations there, the idea of doing something more immediate to block off that slip lane while there's work, future plans, it seems like a situation where we shouldn't let the future development influence the need for immediate action.
Exactly.
I agree. That's like a Jersey barrier situation.
Couple cones.
And also, I'm at the point where I feel like every slip lane in Metro needs to justify its existence. I think there are some contexts in which a slip lane makes sense, and I think there are many situations. The one that comes to mind every time is the double slip lane from Rosa Parks onto Charlotte, where all the state workers cross.
Yes.
I think is insane, and yet it continues to get repaved and restriped just the way it is.
But this is emblematic of, I think, the single systemic failure in NDOT's approach to our streets. And Kim was describing this, and I say this every meeting, which is that we have no system that revisits whether our roads are still context appropriate when things get built. Yeah. Right? A place where we had 4 parking lots on 4 corners, and now we're going to have 4 large apartment buildings full of young people walking their dogs everywhere, all the time. We have, if I don't know about this, I'm not an engineer, but to my knowledge, we have no system, no policy in place that revisits our streets to say, is this still the context appropriate design for where they are, that is triggered by development?
Right? It should be triggered. Right? If you put a permit in for a 249 unit, apartment building, that should trigger some sort of, look at the streets around it.
Right. And
we don't do it.
Perhaps the council member has slipped out right before I say that. But this seems like something that is perhaps appropriate for legislation, because this is a macro systemic problem, and almost every death that we look at on these monitors is a road that made sense when it was built for where it was built, and now doesn't make sense for where it is because of additional development. And my understanding is that more development is coming to Nashville.
That's what I've heard.
Would you,
And so
guys like for next meeting our development group to come in and address some
love
of
that.
this?
I would love that.
There
This
are
to me is
limits
so-
to what we can affect, unfortunately. We would love to do what you're suggesting.
Well, it's our job to advocate for you. If there's a hole, I would love to hear about it. Yes.
So we'll have someone from development come in next month to kind of explain the process briefly and explain some of your points.
But
That's exactly what I'm looking for.
Someone applying a permit to build a 250 unit whatever shouldn't should be able to trigger a review, but it shouldn't be the only review mechanism, and we shouldn't wait for that permit to happen for a review to.
From a council perspective, I would just observe that almost every single one of those projects is done through spot zoning, right? Because our zoning basically
we love
requires
SPs.
special legislation, and we do the special legislation, and yet we drop the ball on everything around what that means for the neighborhood.
Short of putting a LiDAR in every corner, which don't threaten to be a good time, that at least is a process that's going on that could be used as a trigger to reassess streets. My biggest problem with this is that this is a 1.8 mile stretch of 2nd Avenue on which a driver doesn't have to stop.
Yeah.
There is no stop sign. It used to be 2.1 miles until Kim and the Germantown folks got a stop sign put in at Steam Boys after Hub told me that it was impossible to put a stop sign there. But now, going south, my house is on screen. Going south from Madison Street, you will get off screen to the bottom before you have to stop as a driver. And that is a serious recipe for danger in the densest residential neighborhood in the city.
It's all the way past the train tracks.
Yes,
all
it
the way
is.
up to the substation.
It's all the way down to Gay Street, I think.
Yes.
It is 1.8 miles. That is a recipe for dangerous
Yes,
driving
you go under
in a very walkable area. That is the kind of thing that we have to fix.
And I think it's also critically important to say that there is a greenway crossing there that is now very beautiful. I mean, it's a beautiful greenway crossing. And so now we've got the same situation we had on 3rd Avenue where we're telling drivers, go fast because there's no stopping, there's nothing slowing you down, and very few, like literally no markings for that greenway crossing right now. I don't know if that's in the plans, but they're not there now. And so we're creating the same situation that we had on 3rd Avenue. Many more pedestrians, a greenway crossing, and drivers getting the message that they should go fast down that street.
And because we allow parking still on 2nd, I think the visibility is even worse than 3rd.
I completely
the
agree with
chances are
you.
worse of a review than what your thought comments.
And in fact, this morning I had an unhinged interaction with a delivery driver who was parked in the crosswalk for the greenway right there.
And 9/10 of a mile of drag racing runway on either side of it. You know, we have to find a way to check if our streets are still context sensitive when new stuff is built. This street, none of us would have complained about this street when this was warehouses and empty parking lots and not a soul living within 8 blocks on either side. It's a different neighborhood and a different city, and it needs to be a different street. And we need a mechanism for that is systemic.
Yes.
I echo all those sentiments. For the short term, I think what have been suggested, some sort of barrier around the slip lane, or at least
a big pile of dirt.
A big pile of dirt.
Cheap.
Maybe some
We have
Josie
an old
barriers.
couch to drag up there.
Well, we've talked about doing tactile urbanism as this body. Is that something that we're interested in? Like, would that be acceptable for us to submit a tactile urbanism application?
I have no issue with it. I think Metro Legal would.
Really?
We can't talk to each other outside of this.
Well,
That's true.
Well, we could work on it on our
We have to be
working meeting.
publicly noticed.
that's fine. We can public notice is great, I think, for tactile urbanism.
I would support that. I think everyone would.
Should we request something from Metro Legal on whether we can submit tactical urbanism
That's
proposals as
asking
a
for
board?
it in 4 months' time.
Should we
that
just
would
do
be
it and then they
months
can
and
tell
months.
us?
Let's
that-
submit it, and if they say no, they say no.
Submit and find out.
And if needed, we could always see if there are different groups in that area who'd be willing to partner
Surely.
with it.
Sure. All right. We have one more fatal crash to talk about. April 18th.
Sorry, just to.
Yes.
Sorry, I keep interrupting
You're
because
fine.
you're ready to move on. I just wanted to mention, because I don't think we got to this part, that the person who died at this location's name was Larry W. Smith, and he seemed to be a valued member of his community, and is someone who will be missed.
Yeah.
He went by Pops. He was a former resident of Old Tent City, and had fairly recently been housed, is my understanding.
So wanted to move next to actually April 18th, Harding Place and Tampa Drive, where Herschel Trotter, who is 66, was killed after being struck behind while cycling on Harding Place. The driver fled and is still, as far as everything that I've been able to find, at large. They found parts belonging to a 2016 to 2018 gray Nissan Altima, which might have front end damage and a broken taillight, or broken headlight, excuse me. This is just another example to me of people navigate the city in the way that they are able. And I'm compelled to think that Herschel Trotter was cycling down Harding Place because that was the means that he could move through Nashville. And ultimately he was struck from behind, and killed and left for dead. I don't know the specific exact location of this crash, if it occurred in the intersection or if it occurred slightly further up or down Harding, but it occurred near here.
And I just want to say, so this is my neighborhood. Like, this is very close to my home. And there have been a number of deaths within a mile of here, of pedestrians and motorists, and now of this cyclist. And Harding is slated to become a complete street one day, but I have a lot of concern about the timeline of that. People die on Harding every single year. And at this point, it's looking as if we won't expect any complete streets at all within at least the next 5 years. And as far as I'm aware, Harding hasn't even begun any kind of conversations about becoming a complete street. So I think it would be safe to say that it probably won't become one for 10 years, you know? That would, to me, after being on this committee for a few years, seems like a reasonable estimate. And in that time, you know, we're thinking about how many dozens of people dying here, right? And to me, it connects to the Gallatin deaths that we talked about, in part because in both cases, we've been told to wait because one day there will be a really nice street here, but that's not going to do anything for the people who will die in the meantime, right? I use this road frequently. Like, I could die here. It won't matter to me if it's improved after I die. And so I say that mostly to speak in favor of thinking about how we can create some kind of change on Harding Place in the meantime. The easiest I can think of, it's actually related to this conversation as well, is that there is a frequently used right turn on Tampa, right turn on Red, as you get to the interstate. I don't know if this driver had turned right on Tampa or not, but it certainly contributes to high speeds there. So if it becomes right turn on green only, you know, I don't know what the best solution would be here, but I do think something has to be done before 2036.
Between Antioch Pike and Nolensville Road, there have been more fatal pedestrian and cycling crashes than there have been vehicle fatal crashes. And since 2018, it only looks like 2019 and 2021 were the only years where there was not a fatal pedestrian or cyclist crash along that mile-and-a-half stretch. And
I do think, I mean, maybe lighting could go a long way. I know that there is the NDOT, I don't know the right language for it. One of the NDOT employees has like a project of creating improved pedestrian lighting, right? Anyway, there are bus stops near this is what I'm getting at, and these crosswalks that those could be something that we could implement as well.
I'm looking at the sidewalk ending here, right?
Oh yeah,
2 feet from the bus stop. It's nice that we put a little fence in.
it's a beautiful
Just say
sidewalk
don't-
for
don't walk.
4 or 5 yards.
Yeah. Almost wider than it is long.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty typical.
Yep.
And do we know, were there any witnesses to this other than the driver and the cyclist?
As far as I'm aware, someone called in at some time in the future to say that there was somebody in the road.
So we just have no idea what occurred.
Herschel Trotter was also homeless. I think that's another notable thing. Of the 4,
yeah.
Yeah, of the
Fatal
4,
crashes.
we had 3 homeless deaths in the last month between cyclists and pedestrians, or 4. We had 4 people. And Herschel Trotter was one of them. There's an encampment very close by, near the interstate, and yeah, his life matters too.
Indeed.
Absolutely. I am looking at the news articles, and the car that hit him has been recovered, but I don't know if that has led to any arrests.
Relevant to this crash, although not specific to the road design, I also wanted to mention that in the police statement about this crash, they stated the bicyclist was not wearing any protective gear.
Yeah.
And I think this reiterates a concern that I have about some of the language that MNPD is using around crashes and particularly around fatal crashes, that is frankly victim blaming.
Exactly.
I don't know how you get hit at a high speed from behind while riding your bicycle and survive even if you're wearing a helmet. So it doesn't seem like that was really germane to the situation, and unclear why they felt the need to mention that.
Yeah.
But that has been language that they've used in other crashes, along with encouraging people to make eye contact with drivers and wear high-vis things while you're walking around your neighborhood. And none of that seems particularly conducive to a safety culture amongst drivers. So I find that language really troubling.
I agree.
Yeah, especially because this was a hit and run.
Yeah.
But this is not the first time we've had this conversation. We have this conversation
every time.
Yeah.
No, we sent a letter to NDOT and to MNPD to coordinate on better language in MNPD press releases in March of 2025. So it has been over a year. Specific to, Kim, thank you for bringing that up again. Specific to that, I did give public comment a day or 2 after this crash occurred, and that language was used by MNPD and then recirculated by WKRN, WSMV, News Channel 5, Fox 17, shared my disdain for that with BPAC. So hopefully we can find some way for MNPD in that language to change. We'll continue to work on that.
So for the next meeting, as in for all of the bike and pad fatal crashes we've discussed tonight, we would just like an update on any short-term solutions that NDOT could implement, and would expect that at our next meeting. And maybe just some more crash information for this area would be helpful, even though Charlie has done a wonderful job of sourcing it. I don't want to create the expectation that he has to do that every time.
And I am looking forward to potentially submitting a tactical urbanism program to help with 2nd and Junior Gilliam Way. But I do want to just air frustration with the fact that exasperated advocates are having to submit tactical urbanism applications to fix our roadways. We come to these meetings, we show up to planning meetings where we leave silly post-it notes on huge printouts of designs and roadways and infrastructure. we show up to council meetings, we do all of this endless work, and ultimately we're tasked with also doing the tactical urbanisms to fix the roadways. That's really, really hard to swallow. Kim?
I have a simple question. When you use the term short term, how are you using that term? What is your reasonable timeline that you are expecting these things to be done? Because I know there's quite a few things since I've been on this committee that has been
short
off
term
and backlog and pushed back for a number of years before quite a few of us were on the committee. So when we're saying short term, are we putting a timeline to the term short term? And if so, what do you think should be reasonable?
Something that we had discussed at our working meeting a few weeks ago was to first have this fatal crash discussion with the expectation that we would also hear, or at least have some information on other crashes that occurred in this area immediately in the month following a fatal crash, of just let's have this discussion and try to figure out how to move forward. By the second meeting after the fatal crash, we would hear about any short or long-term solutions from the NDOT staff. And then by the third meeting, we would want to know how that was being implemented, with the expectation that something short-term had been acted on, is what we had discussed at our committee meeting. And that's not even short-term, right? That's like a over 3-month deadline. And I wish we could create a shorter short-term, but considering most of the short-term actions we've recommended, or that have been recommended in the past, never occur, I feel like a 3 to 4 month timeline is.
Let's put it in this context. When Emily Ramirez Sanchez was killed, is it Sanchez Ramirez?
I don't know.
When the young 10-year-old girl was on a scooter with her mom and hit and killed, we put delineators along the entire length of Nolensville within 4 weeks.
Exactly.
That's a quick response.
Exactly.
Now, that was an exceptional response, and I think that am thankful for that response. You know, in the instance of Second Avenue, right? There's things we can do that don't get to that scale, but it's really sad and heartbreaking that that's the only single quick response that I can attribute to any fatal crash that has happened.
No. And I would, I wish we would respond that way to every crash.
Yep.
Because every life matter that we lose on the roadways.
Indeed.
I know.
I was going to say, while not a quick response to a particular crash, I was able to put a tactical urbanism project through to construction within 6 weeks.
Yeah.
While I was at NDOT, that actually was a slip lane closure similar to what we're trying to do here. So, if anything, if let's do double that, 12 weeks, we can get these things done.
Right.
So we have a minor, a high schooler that is able to get, if he can get that time.
Exactly.
But again, the community should not be taking the onus to do these fatal crash responses. The department that's in charge of maintaining and organizing and running our roadways should be.
Should we?
Yes.
Before we do, regarding what you are proposing, I guess, for the coming meetings, it seems like we're going back to how we structured this meeting and the subcommittee meetings about 2 years ago. Just being cognizant of the time and how much detail you're asking for regarding these crashes. Previously, we had the subcommittee meeting to kind of go into detail about the crashes. Is that something that the committee's looking for, or just? accommodating more time for?
We're trying to accommodate more time for these discussions. And I know that this one has been particularly long, but that's also because we have had an unusual number of cyclist and pedestrian crashes in the last month, which is why this has lasted so long. And we do really want to focus on this fatal crash review with the understanding that we do have our working meeting, as you know, once a month, but we get a lot more participation and people are able to show up to this meeting, including the public. And so these crashes lend themselves to more of a discussion rather than just us listening to a PowerPoint about an NDOT project. So we do really want to center our meetings around fatal crash and hearing about any updates or changes in order to just provide us with more structure, I think.
Yeah. Concur. Thank you, Pira.
Thank you so much, Pira. Appreciate it.
Okay. Next on the discussion was bylaws vote. I would motion to defer that.
That's fine. Second.
Agreed.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Next up, we have a near-miss resolution that Austin put together. Austin's been discussing this for a month or two, has put a really nice document together describing how Northern Virginia Families for Safe Streets launched a near-miss and dangerous locations dashboard back in 2021. It allows pedestrians and cyclists to mark bad behavior from drivers, including speeding, witnessing distracted driving, passing stop school buses, failure to yield, identifying also the different types of road users at risk if you identify themselves as pedestrian, a cyclist, you name it. But nonetheless, I think that this would be an exceptional thing for NDOT and more than likely the HUB team to coordinate on to create this tool for citizens of Nashville, people who come to Nashville and use HubNashville, to help identify areas that need attention, that need some kind of engineered change to adjust driver behavior. That said, Austin, do you have any other context you'd like to share?
I guess I'll just clarify that these other entities built standalone applications to do this, and I explicitly went out of the way to highlight that this is in HubNashville because it already exists. We do not need to build a new application. All of the hard work has already been done. We just need another menu item.
Yeah.
It's like, there's a menu item for a pothole. There's a menu item for a car parked on the sidewalk. Just add one for, at this location, someone nearly hit me. I exactly copied the data fields they have in theirs. It's date, time, location, presence of children, behavior, type of road user at risk, and description. Yeah.
Many of us, as Kim was mentioning, we have all almost gotten hit almost on a weekly basis, and whether we're a pedestrian or a cyclist.
Yes, and the point being to gather this data to make these decisions proactively so that we have something to refer to when we make a decision before anyone has been killed there, right? Yes, we could look at where all the fatal crashes have occurred, but if we look at an intersection where there's a bunch of complaints about near misses, that is direct feedback from the community saying that this is a problem. And if we change it now or after we get that data, then we don't have to have another point on the fatal crash pop up there.
So you're saying that this would be easy to add to Hub, or
I believe so. Considering how many menu items they have on there, I'm sure one
seems like we should reach out to the Hub team.
Yes, and the resolution let's see, request that NDOT and any other relevant departments take inspiration from these other projects, which in this document I have lined up.
Yep.
I think, is it on the SharePoint?
It is on SharePoint.
It's on SharePoint, good, okay. I've got a few, news articles about the impacts of these things in these other cities. I was trying to go for how can we get the most out of the least effort? That's the basics of what I was going for here. So.
Well,
does the NDOT team have any context on how Hub's, how 311's processes work, how interactions between NDOT and Hub work?
I'll say I like the idea of adding the menu item. I don't speak for IT, but it sounds doable. What I need from you guys is once it's entered in Hub, and John Doe has entered it, and it's got that drop-down menu, where does it dispatch to? Mm-hmm. PD, lighting. Maybe, you got to fine-tune that because you don't want to just fall off the edge of the desk and go nowhere. Most of that sounds like it would go to PD, but it might go to engineering. So it might have a buzzword in there that sends it to whatever department we need to.
I feel like we get a lot of service requests like near miss. I think a lot of times that does come up in the service request, and we address it, whether it's crossing related or whatnot.
Yeah, I think this kind of back end for collecting the data. Yeah.
Or you can send it all to engineering. That's my heart for saying that, but send it all to engineering, and then we dispatch it to whoever might need it. And we can do that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
there's a trail you can follow.
That would probably make the most sense.
I think, Austin, in the resolution, you've just focused on adding the menu.
Yes.
Item.
Yep.
So I think that back end piece, is something we can
Sounds
leave
cool.
to be worked out outside of the resolution itself.
Yes, because they're only gathering data. And if the data gets gathered, even if no one is acting on it quite yet, it's all going to be there. And people can look at it on the HubNashville map. So it will. That is kind of part of the point too, is public availability of this data, so that an interested party, such as someone who may or may not be in this room, can take a look at it and come to their own conclusions on their own, and use that to drive their own advocacy, their own tactical urbanism applications, so
their own way that they walk their dog or their child.
Yes.
Well, but the use of a buzzword is not a bad idea, so it can be dispersed immediately.
Yeah.
Well, and if we're building extra Vision Zero staffing or contractor capacity inside NDOT, then certainly that seems like somebody that should be receiving these in their inbox, or at least getting a geo report of them.
And there is near miss data that's collected to some degree through existing LiDAR systems. Yeah, so I mean, where does that? Who evaluates that?
Vanderbilt.
Sort of. Well, we are teamed with Vanderbilt. Whoever said that, we are teamed with Vanderbilt, and then Heroes Group looks at the LiDAR data, and it's all about capacity of how much data we can go out and get.
Yeah.
We got so many LiDAR trailers, and where do they all go? But that could be part of this exercise.
This fills in the gaps where LiDAR trailers can't get.
Yep.
Well, and also maybe where LiDAR needs to be placed to gather additional data.
Correct.
I would motion to take a vote. Or motion to
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Fantastic.
All right.
We'll make sure that gets to correct parties. We'll get it in Hub's hand as well.
Yep.
I really appreciate the glimmer of us being able to notice a bad road without someone having to go out and document it.
Yes.
Well, we notice it all the time because we're out there and about doing our things, but we want to make sure that it's not just anecdotal evidence when we come to the table and say this road sucks. We want to be able to point at a map and say we have 15 other people who are all different people over the course of a month all saying that this road is awful.
Yeah.
So
Sorry, I'm talking a lot. I would suggest too that some of our when we are doing our Vision Zero communications, drive like grandmas in the car, some of that money might be well spent encouraging people to report their near misses, which I think people would be willing to do if they knew that was an option.
Indeed.
Yeah, at the working session, we also talked about working with community organizations like Walk Bike Nashville to help communicate the availability of this tool and encourage people to to submit.
Yep.
Nice.
Let's move forward. Next up, we have presentation on signals and lighting and paving. Are we going to all of it together?
I'm just going to cover the street lighting portion.
Okay.
I got, for you, the next two would be better, but that's for the end.
So you want this one?
Can I can plug in, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Well, not that one, just plug in here.
Okay, that's fine. I'll get there. I'm just gonna go through, got the questions that were given to me, and I'm gonna respond to those. I got some references that I can show in that process too, and also there's been Lafayette come up. I can? Okay. And additional questions that I could probably add more information to as well. But do you guys have the question list in front of you? And if
I
not,
have
can
my
just
questions.
reiterate the question. But
I think everybody is aware of the general questions.
okay.
But
well, I'll just go through these, and then if you guys have any questions as we go through, you can jump in for each one. But first question is regarding the time to completion rates for NES. Comparing the old contract to the new contract. Old contract did not have any specific time frame requirement. New contract is stated as the goal is to get through 7 days, within 7 days. And just had a meeting with NES yesterday, but the current average response time is 5.09 days. And then they also stated that that's slightly higher due to the recent ice storm and other things that they've been impacted by. But then the following question is that meeting NDOC's expectations? And yes, there is a bit of time where I requested something regarding lighting and they haven't completed it in the time. I would say the 5 days, I would say 5 to 10 days. I would say for me personally, 10 day response time. But moving to the incentive penalty regarding the new contract, there's really only one thing regarding penalties, and it talks about how if at any point 5% of the metro-owned streetlights are out, then NDOT billing will get an incentivized where it's a decrease in billing for that month. And then on the opposite side, and that would be, I guess, an NES penalty, but on the opposite side for them being incentivized, Metro is their largest client, so keeping the street lights up for safety, I feel like is an incentive itself. But there's no specific incentives that NDOT provides to NES for maintaining street lights. Next question is regarding new software. So as you guys know, the LED retrofit has been going on for 3.5 years now, but every new approved LED light has a controller on top of it. It's like a little light hat on top of it, but that we use a software called I don't even know how, it's like IVView, but it's basically, you go in the software, it shows you the entire map of the street lights on the grid, and that way you can do a remote control where if you need to dim a light, if you need to turn it on or turn it on off. And also for tracking purposes, you go in, if the light is knocked over, if it's off, it's pinned as, needs service. And I've yet to be in that, but we are working with NES to be able to have limited access for those purposes, to be able to, instead of me going through the process of, let's say I get a request through HubNashville, I would like a street light put in, I would like a street light dimmed. Or specifically for dimming, I could go into that software myself, as opposed to spending, that 5 to 10 day turnaround to go in there, dim it myself. It's a 20-minute process. And then, so follow-up, it says, if not, what technical tools do we use for those speedy replacements? And it would be through HubNashville. We have a monthly progress meeting for streetlights, and the turnaround, we always get an update on the HubNashville request, and the turnaround is always 100% that I've been a part of the streetlight. So let's say we get 30 hub requests for streetlights, 30 of them are closed out and resolved. Next up is talking about the street lighting project. I can show you guys our recent update from NES and PATH regarding this. So earlier it was stated the counterclockwise movement. So currently, it shows up here the phases. So we worked our way counterclockwise. Currently we're down here in the final stage. Everything with a check mark has been approved and noted as completed. Everything with nothing in it means no lights right here. It's in the medium process where it's finished but hasn't been completely approved as completed. Right here shows kind of the same thing, just showing you the fully completed, the in the process, and then hasn't been started yet. These 2 blocks were just submitted to be scheduled. I want to say last week, and those were the final 2. And as you see, it says this is for the roadway, interstate, and decorative. And there will be a later slide showing most of these is just the interstate, including the net roadway, and there are one-offs. But also decorative occurred, the LED retrofit, the decoratives were just got pushed through at the end of last year. And we had prioritized around the metros, the downtown, or the, what do you call that?
Downtown
Country Music Hall of Fame, the center there, the downtown center. I think it went from 1st to 8th to Mumbrian or KVB to Broadway, so that whole block was prioritized first, and then from there it's just going to be kind of scheduled out from there. But on here, this is the completion timeline. Currently, we're here at this mark in April. We're at like 50,000 out of 58,000 converted. I'll show some more data as well, but here's just a quick overview of some really positive improvement, showing a decrease in almost every form of crash regarding the streetlights after pre and post installation. And then I'll just show you this map here. This is just showing the interstate status. So as you saw, there's still lights to be swapped over, but it's just mainly the interstate loop. Regarding the timeline, originally it was a 5.5-year timeline. We're on pace to finish in 3.5 years, which is awesome. The high injury network it talks asks about prioritization, and it has been prioritized. And NES says 99% completion. There are some that they stated as miscellaneous reasons for haven't been swapped over. But we're having, as we reach the end of it, we're having monthly coordination meetings to ensure those gaps are filled. And just some more information, as I told you, counterclockwise movement. So let's say they were working on, up Gallatin, in those neighborhoods. There was times where I would submit a corridor of Murfreesboro Pike from X to X to be retrofitted, and those would be done. They would pretty much be moved from there down to the Murfreesboro corridor to prioritize those. Another thing, it talks about the retrofit misses. So that goes with how are we coordinating with NES to ensure that doesn't happen. I think it's a mix of, there's map blocks that NES has, so picture just a brick layout grid, and the process was map block by map block. So there could be one neighborhood that was in one map block that also was in another, so it could be where that got retrofitted. It looks like the rest of the neighborhood wasn't retrofitted until a later date. But I think it's just the 2 things to confirm that we're staying on top of not having the one-offs is every light has a controller on it, so we can now see if it's been retrofitted and it's also on. But 2, the monthly meetings where we have 4 months left, so it's just going to be kind of closing things out as obviously the bulk of, I think they said 89%. We're 89% in. And then the last thing, so I'm just going to jump to Lafayette here. So I think this was the map that you were looking at earlier for showing that they're pending install. This entire corridor, when it comes to roadway lighting, was completed, but these, like I told you, the decoratives were later. The yellows are all decoratives to be installed. And this might, no, I don't think this, I think the cutoff, this was the cutoff that I was saying, all the decoratives to be included in the prioritization. But right here, it's just, this shows you, this is an LED, this has been retrofitted, but this is just a decorative fixture that's pending retrofit. And I don't have a timeline on the decoratives. It'll be, there's a lot less of those, so it'll be quicker. And then also regarding Lafayette, I have been informed, like the lighting upgrades that are desired here. I just got back yesterday, a photometric plan showing this corridor from 2nd to Fairfield, and we'll be submitting to NES any improvements that we saw. I don't know the exact number, but there was areas that we'll be adding lights to, just to improve the lighting. Secondary analysis for the intersection specifically. And then also, there are, so pedestrian, going back to the pedestrian specific, we're also we're looking at we have different vendors. We're working with other vendors as opposed to NES lighting, so we have other options than just having to rely on NES for lighting. One location we're looking at is on this corridor of Lafayette. It's going to be Wharf, Claiborne, or Fairfield, and we're working with a vendor for a pedestrian scale lighting on that, hopefully to be implemented very soon. We have a call with them tomorrow. So, and then I'll take this off and I'll have Christy show you guys. I worked with James Guthrie from planning with the Metro office. He reached out to me just regarding kind of this. He wanted to get some statistics on the LED retrofit to be able to show just how positive it's been. And this hasn't been published yet, but this is just on the screen, just by corridor. It shows you the first 24 months before the retrofit, and then the second 24 months after the retrofit, just showing you the change in crashes. And obviously they fluctuate. There's a few that did increase. And I will preface that this is for total, this is not strictly just for nighttime crashes. This is for all crashes on that corridor. I did request that we specifically look at the nighttime to get direct data for the lights. But I do think that the data shown here with the percentage changes, the lighting has had an impact on that, although I can't obviously specifically show it. I think we have a second slide, and at the bottom it shows you, the very last one shows you the all segments combined, which we've had a decrease in everything. I'm a big proponent of the LED retrofit. I know there's mixed reviews with them being brighter than high pressure sodium, but I think the data speaks where there's light, it's safer. Yeah. So, I went through that kind of fast. I know we got a lot.
No.
Through, but if you guys have any questions, let me know. But
thank you for your time. I know lighting is the kind of thing that probably, it's one of the biggest things to keep people safe. So
yeah.
I know you probably don't get a lot of, but I think the people on this committee know what it means. So thank you.
Can you share some more context around how NDOT and the city determine lighting needs and address lighting needs just beyond this retrofit?
So during the retrofit, we would get, like I said, we would get the map block.
Right.
So I think specifically to it, whenever I would do a review, you review every street, and I would base my analysis on whether it's a local collector. Like the roadway classification, you look at crash history, you look at volume, you look at the speed of the roadway, etc. And you're able to, I would make improvements through that. But outside of the retrofit, I have a prioritization sheet that basically uses the same factors of, pedestrian incidents, total, but focused on serious and fatals.
Right.
And HubNashville is huge, obviously. You know, I'm one person. Whenever everybody tells me where to look, that helps me look. But we utilize AGI. It's a lighting software where you can put in the lights, look where we need to improve. Like right now, we're currently looking at Sylvan Park, the roundabout there on Murphy and 46 for lighting improvements. But it's just kind of it's a mix of HUD requests and also personal observation, you know. And then, like I said, we use a lighting software. You could use a meter and go out and do it yourself, get the reading yourself. But we have a lighting pathways manual that lists all the roadway classification, lighting minimums we try to meet, whether it's local, collector, arterial, sidewalk, crosswalk, intersections. Goes through all that. So that's what we compare it to, and that's what we try to reach. So, and obviously infrastructure with NES, there could be, you can't put a pole everywhere.
Right.
But that's why we're exploring other options with vendors, solar, pedestrian focus, etc. So
it has, I'm assuming, LED and solar capacity is just kind of changed the game on the things that y'all could potentially do in the past number of years?
I would say for sure. I mean, without being tied to power, like I think solar opens us up for multiple reasons, but one is location. You can kind of choose more. It doesn't have to be close to existing utility. It can be kind of focus on where you need it to be as opposed to where the existing utility poles are, etc.
Right.
I'm working with Signals too in the future to hopefully adding lights on top of signal poles could be an easy addition as opposed to putting in a utility pole with NES. So, but yeah, I mean, I think solar, it has its benefits, but it has its challenges as well. So
yeah. Any other questions, y'all, before we?
Just a quick one. When you say hub requests, is there like a category for requesting lighting improvements?
There's two, there's maybe three, but there's the two that I'm certain of are just a lighting dimming request, or dimming and shielding request. So with the LED retrofit, we just got an influx kind of this light's too bright, and then a lot of issues of them shining into houses. So we have a dimming and a shielding request, but then also just an installation of street light, which are all reviewed. I started doing some more reviews, and we also have a lot of development lighting reviews that have to go, be included. But
all right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Can you tell Brandon's not from Nashville when he says Lafayette?
Yeah. I'll just, if I didn't introduce myself, I'm Brandon, and I'm on the track.
Thank you, Brandon.
I do the same thing for the first 2 years.
And I do want to take a quick moment. I don't want to go crazy over, but I would be fine being here a few minutes past 7 for this presentation.
Yeah, this is, I think, really important, and this was brought up by a recent fatal crash. Gallatin. So.
Good evening. My name is Darren Pack, and tonight I'll be discussing signal timing as it pertains to pedestrians. So, first thing I'm going to do is just go over the indications. I'm sure most of the people here are familiar with these but just so we're on the same page on what we're discussing. So you have your pedestrian time. That's indicated by the walking symbol. It's typically 7 seconds, but there are some locations where we have longer walking signal, where that's intervals longer. And that's to indicate to the pedestrian that they can enter the crosswalk. And then we have the pedestrian clearance time. This is the time that it should take for a pedestrian to cross from curb to curb or detectable warning strip to detectable warning strip. And we determine that by measuring the distance from curb to curb or detectable warning strip to detectable warning strip and dividing by a typical walking speed. And I can go over those walking speeds here in a second. And then part of that pedestrian clearance time is the pedestrian change interval. That's your count. That's your flashing symbol with the countdown clock, and that's to indicate to those that are in the crosswalk to, proceed through the crosswalk. But for those that are not in the crosswalk, to don't enter. And then you have steady walk, meaning it should be clear. So we typically use a standard 3.5 feet per second. That's according to MUTCD. 4 feet per second can be used. However, that is only with detection or push button. I was talking with one of our technicians today, and we pretty much never use 4 feet per second. It's pretty much 3 feet, 3.5 feet, excuse me. Pedestrian push buttons, they activate the crossing signal of the walk phase, and that sends a signal to the traffic controller to include the pedestrian phase in the next cycle. And then this diagram, this diagram really illustrates what we're talking about. So you have your 7-second minimum interval, and then you have your pedestrian clearance interval. And then consisting of that pedestrian clearance interval, you have your change interval, and then you have a buffer. And that buffer is a minimum of 2 seconds. It can be the yellow change interval, or it can be a combination of the yellow change interval and the red clearance interval, or it can be the red clearance interval. And hold on, let me back up. So this diagram depicts how the pedestrian interval relates to vehicular intervals.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, let's look at it. And then here's some of the math behind it. And then slide. And then here's a summary of our downtown signal timing progress.
Real quick, I'm sorry, I'm a nerd. Can you go back to the formulas?
There's a pop quiz after this, guys.
I do have one question.
Yep.
In your timing, how are people with disabilities factored into
That's a good question. So,
the 7 seconds is going to take me longer than 7 seconds.
Right.
Roll from 8
Yep. And so 7 seconds is, that's the minimum. There are locations like 5th and Broadway where we have 10.
Okay.
And
explain the flashing don't walk is the distance that you're allowed to, that we want you in the street crossing is the walk symbol and the flashing don't walk.
Okay.
After that steady hand, nobody should be in the road.
Okay.
The crossing distance divided by your speed, and that's where
3.5 feet.
That's where different clientele, if you want to call it that, have different walking speeds. And that's where you can adjust that flashing don't walk time. For the nerds up there, that top left basically says your flashing don't walk time is your distance divided by your walking speed. And that's why at the bottom it says flashing don't walk plus buffer, crossing distance in feet, divided by crossing speed in feet per second. And that second part, feet per second, is where we can adjust based on the user.
Thank you.
Okay, and then here's the crash summary for downtown signal timing. As many of you know, we implemented LPIs and exclusive pedestrian intervals throughout downtown, within the loop and a few locations outside the downtown loop. 76 total LPIs, and I want to say, don't quote me on this, but 5 XPEDs. And then we looked at crash data at signalized intersections and that were within an intersection. In other words, signalized intersections that were intersection related for the period of March 25th to March 25th of 2022 to 2023, 2023 to 2024, 2024 to 2025. We compile the average, and then we compare the 1-year results of downtown signal timing to that average. And we would say these results were positive, with the exception of the fails. And if there are no further questions on the slides, I can move to some of the questions that we got regarding signal timing in general.
Darren, while you're on this slide, what did we implement with this project?
We implemented leading pedestrian intervals
Great.
at 76 total. So not just, it wasn't just 76 intersections. And then exclusive pedestrian intervals.
Ped scrambles, yeah.
Yep. Reduce the cycle length. And yeah, left turn phases, yeah. Remove left turn phases.
All right.
Sorry to interrupt.
Okay.
Yeah, I think on to some of the questions that we shared.
Okay. So, what does NDOT learn from the LPI project? We have seen improvements in pedestrian-related crashes. However, NDOT will implement these changes where appropriate infrastructure is in place. So what do we mean by that? We're really referring to locations where there isn't a leading protected left turn phase. And I haven't found anywhere where you're discouraged from implementing an LPI where there's a leading pedestrian left, or excuse me, where there's a leading left turn arrow. However, we've kind of noticed in 6th and Jefferson that if a driver is in that has a yellow arrow and they're coming up on that red clearance, they have a tendency to push that interval. Mm-hmm. And so the first person they're going to hit, all right, I just said it, first thing they're going to hit is a person. So that's why whenever we do these, we like to lag the left turn, so that way the pedestrian's already across the street. Or we install these with a 4-section head flashing yellow arrow. If any of you have been in Mount Juliet, they're all over the place in the Providence area. The advantage of that is drivers taking left, and then during that there's a split time where they get a red arrow and they're told to stop as opposed to just pushing it.
Right.
Okay, so that answered that. What areas are next for LPIs, and where's the timetable for those? So we have an LPI project that is Vision Zero for it's not just LPI. It's really just pet improvement for Dickerson, Gallatin, Hermitage, and Nolensville Pike. We've already done 5 intersections so far. This project will consist of 86, but some of these are pretty intense. Like they'll involve like real pet heads and whatnot. Mm-hmm. That's an older project that we're picking back up. What areas are next to? Okay, I already answered that. Oh, and then of course, we also, we can evaluate an intersection for an LPI. We get a HUB request. We can always look at that.
Okay.
Is NDOT prioritizing high-entry network for new LPIs? Yes, most of those locations that I just talked about, they're outside the downtown loop. Those are pretty much all on the high-entry network. They're on Hermitage, Dickerson, Gallatin, Nolensville. Yeah. One of the locations is OHB and Pitts. If you want to kind of get a look if you're out that way. What signalized projects will be completed in 2026 to improve safety? I mean, I would say, the the purpose of all of our projects. I mean, we're trying to improve safety at all of them. I mean, I can get a sample from some of our techs, but we'll get, I mean, some of the ones that some of the locations that I mentioned through that Vision Zero project with the LPIs and whatnot. I mean, there's going to be a sample right there. So there's going to be quite a few.
All right.
I have some questions.
Yes.
They didn't get sent on.
Yeah.
I have some questions. I sent them to the team, but I guess I didn't get sent on. But I was just wondering, in general, and this isn't about LPIs, it's just about signalization. What I don't understand is why do we give folks the pedestrian signal, the indication to cross, when we still give the green light to someone who could hit them? And obviously I know they're supposed to yield, but especially if they're just coming up to that intersection and they're trying to get there before the light changes. What I don't understand is, like, we had a recent crash on Gallatin that we discussed at our April meeting, where a woman was in a wheelchair and she was crossing at a designated time, but the driver didn't yield, and I'm pretty sure they had a green light. And so it just seems like we create, and I know most cities do this, and I'm not saying this is just NDOT in any way, but what I don't understand is why we create conflict. Why do we allow people to cross the street while still giving the green to some folks? I know they're supposed to yield. We know they don't yield. And we know that people die that way. And I'm just wondering, like, what necessitates allowing car traffic to continue when someone is crossing the street? Like, is there guidance? Like, what's kind of the framework for that?
Well, I mean, the only way to really mitigate what you're referring to is an exclusive pedestrian phase.
Yeah.
And we can look at those. We can warrant them. We can look at pedestrian volume and see, and we can look at the feasibility of implement those as needed. But I think it's, as far as getting the green ball with the pedestrian walk symbol, I mean, I guess, I don't know, Chip, I mean,
the LPI is, and I hate to use the word attempt, but the LPI is an attempt to get that vision to the driver that now you're supposed to yield. And it is a yield condition, the green ball is used, but people do or don't. And then the next step would be an exclusive pit phase. And then the next step would be no right on red, too.
I agree with all of those things.
Lock down the intersection, basically, like Broadway does.
Yeah.
Broadway, when it gets an exclusive pad, all those no right on red signs illuminate. And if somebody gets hit on Broadway, most likely a motorist was in violation or the pad crossed on a don't walk. But it's not a signal conflict.
Right.
And so that would be the remedy that you're looking for.
Yeah.
Then it comes down to capacity and moving modes of traffic. And then you're warranted, how many PEDs do you have? How many crashes do you have? And then you weigh all that and say, maybe it's worth it to do an exclusive PED.
That said, and one thing we noticed that, Chip, you noticed this way before I did, but after doing this work on this downtown signal timing project, there's no such thing as a silver bullet, because 2 of those 4 fatals, they happened where there was exclusive PED. 4th and KVB. There was one hit and run at 4th and KVB.
Right.
The other one was vehicular.
Right.
But there's no.
Does NDOT have a threshold on our high injury network, so out of the downtown core, that if X non-fatal PED or X amount of fatal pedestrian crashes happened, that they would implement an exclusive, even if it was on a beg button, an exclusive pedestrian signal?
For saving distribution of time, we do want buttons where you have exclusive beds. So it's not serving it at all hours of the day. And
Right.
pedestrian netting. So Darren just volunteered himself to do a crosswalk policy. He did, not just tonight. I'm not making that up.
Yeah.
So while looking at that crosswalk policy, we're going to roll signal timing into that. Crosswalk policy being where to put it.
Right.
And what treatment do you put at them? And then part of that treatment be how do you time it?
Part of
Instead of a traffic signal, it's easier because you have a controller and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, no,
But it's like PhD and that kind of stuff.
And part of that Vision Zero project I was talking about earlier was to bring in a policy, but just it never got brought across the finish line, changeover and whatnot.
I think once there is a draft of the policy, I'm sure we'd love to
Yeah.
take a look
Yeah,
at it.
and we'll put you at the top of the conversation on the agenda that day.
Yeah, so you don't have to give up your dinner to be with us.
Yes, of course you may.
So, a couple of questions regarding this. In regards to the 3.5 second, does Nashville utilize any APS signals at all in regards to the dual button timing for accessible? Because like the gentleman a couple months ago, when somebody in a manual chair that doesn't have upper dexterity is trying to get across the road and using the heel of their foot to scoot, depending on the timing of the day and where the sun is in reference, there's absolutely no way that's going to happen. Is that part of the study? I mean, are they looking at accessible signals? I mean, what is being done in regards to that?
I'll have to check with our...
We are using APS. Not everywhere, as you know, we've been around town, but we are graduating. Just like most things we've talked about today, we're playing catch up. And the APS systems, we're putting them in where we're putting in new signals, or we're upgrading signals. The head extension time is going to be one of the variables you can add to it. And the sight impaired user will be able to hear crossing 5th Street, whatever it is. So we are using the APS systems, but it's a retrofit like Brendan's lighting program. You've got mandatory sensitivities, if that's a word, where you got to place these so you're not hearing one say cross, and so there's a 10-foot minimum you've got to have. So that's infrastructure change. You got to have poles, concrete work. Next thing you know, it's brought into a $100,000 project. But to answer your question flat out, yes, we're going to use APS systems in the future and retrofitting.
Or a study where there is more of an accessible...
And maybe that's part of his policy that we're putting together. That's a good point.
There's the ADA program, but I think it's more so deter brands.
Hey, guess what I do? It works. So this is kind of a real hot button for me. It's seeing a lot of this, and it's kind of gotten more and more and more.
Yeah. Don't quote me on this, but I think 12th and Pine has an APS, but I don't know. It used to have a cross Pine Street, across the audible tone. I don't know if it has the pedestrian time extension on there.
Yeah. And then the 3.5 feet, I mean, that's typical. There are cases where if you have a large number of elderly folks using that, you go like to 3.3. So you're not married to the 3.5.
Any other questions?
Yes. I guess my question remains of like, and I know you're going to work on the policy, but how difficult would it be to at least have a pedestrian exclusive signal for at least when folks hit the button? Because we know people are there trying to cross. How do we avoid creating conflict? And I was listening to what you were saying about Broadway and how the pedestrian exclusive signals issue has like really impacted that conflict, right? And I'm just wondering why we create conflicts on our streets between pedestrians and cars, And it seems like if you have a beg button, it doesn't have to be every cycle. It's just for when someone's there. Shouldn't it just be exclusive for the pedestrians so we avoid, or at least we try to minimize? I know it's not a silver bullet, but I think it could save many lives.
So hit the pedestrian button, and then everything goes, and then you get an exclusive bed.
Yes.
And that would be a question for Dustin.
Political will.
It would also
We do have those, but it comes down to the capacity of the intersection. If you have a pedestrian wanting to cross, and you've got cars that want to go straight through, then there's no conflict. It's that left turner or that right turner where
Yes.
you're having the conflict.
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
And you could address that with no left turn illuminated signs or no right turn illuminated signs or an exclusive pit. But that's where that through car is just sitting there, not going.
Well, no, I agree that like people could go straight, but I'm saying we need to.
A turn.
If there's an opportunity to turn and we're giving them the green to turn, and while technically they should yield, we know they often don't. How do we just
You make it what they call a protected only left turn. Green arrow now goes into a red.
Yes.
Does not go to a green ball. And those are becoming more and more implemented too. Downtown signal timing, we took away some left turn phases on green balls.
So now you just have the permissive and people kind of.
I know we're not directly answering your question because every intersection is not the same, but it comes down to capacity of the intersection, moving all modes, and if that, because the pit times can sometimes be 40 seconds minimum for that flashing drone wall, and that entire intersection is not moving for 40 seconds. That's a long time. I know it doesn't sound like it, but if you do that every fifth cycle, it kind of adds up.
Here's an easy example of this exact scenario. The Greenway crossing at Charlotte Avenue. There is actually no going straight at that particular crossing. There's only right turn or left turn for the traffic. And what happens is the cars coming out of the Publix parking lot get a green light. You have people turning left, and you have pedestrians crossing at the Greenway stopping right there. Now there is an LPI there, but now that you've mentioned it, Olivia, it's not clear to me, like, why can't the pedestrians, it's purely on a bag button, you have to push the button to get the crossing signal, so why can't that be an exclusive crossing?
Well, I think it can be, but we can look at that.
Well, I think about that. I live off of Nolensville and Woodbine, and I walk across Joyner Ave a lot. And when I am given the pedestrian signal, I start walking, but that person in the car also has a green light to take a right while I'm doing that. And there's no like really a straight lane. It doesn't go to anything. It's basically like a three-way stop. There's a restaurant, but you use the left lane for that anyway. So I'm not sure why they're going to be given the green when I'm in the middle of the intersection of like.
And this group is a holistic group. Mm-hmm. But if you have specific cases, do let us know. Lexi's taking notes. And it's a matter of getting back to our signal shop and taking a look at what Charlotte, I think you said.
Yeah. Which we have flashing yellow arrows in.
Yeah.
It's on the list.
Can you say again how to submit an LPI request? Is that a hub?
Like it would be like signal intersection review.
And then just explain that it's
describe it and
say LPI. Great.
And I do think you, Derek, actually have personally responded to my hub requests on a few of those and gotten a few LPIs.
How? I
think so. Yeah.
Just another, I'm sorry, and I know we're over time. I'm just signals I'm very fascinated by, and I appreciate y'all's time. So another question is, how do we we ever prioritize the pedestrian on that signal in terms of like when I'm always waiting to cross at Joyner and Nolensville, and I hit the beg button, and I wait a long time. And I know people often will cross or jaywalk or whatever you want to call it when cars are coming, because you often have to wait so long to cross. It's really uncomfortable because it's Nolensville Pike. You're trying to just not get hit on the sidewalk, right? And so it just feels like I'm always the last one to get a pad cross.
If it's on a coordinated SIS network, then you won't skip So, you won't get your walk symbol right away. But if it's running free, meaning it's not coordinated, I can't really think of an example of an uncoordinated signal right now.
Well, a lot of our main lines overnight will go to free.
Yeah.
You don't need that green band like rush hour.
But if it's uncoordinated, then yeah, you'll get your walk symbol right away.
Okay.
Can I just clarify a question on the hub? Traffic light timing, is that the category?
Traffic signal timing, intersection review.
Intersection review.
All right, cool.
So there's
Traffic, it would all get to the same place.
okay.
As long as you describe what it is.
Yeah. Because there's the engineering intersection review, and then there's signal light timing. Yeah, just wanted to clarify.
Alessia,
yes,
it could also be a maintenance thing. So some of the buttons, like one side could have a functioning button and the other side doesn't. So that's also a thing to consider.
Yes, but he's right. I'm sorry to correct you. When a button goes bad, it falls to a call. So it serves when you don't push a button. We of course want it to serve. We don't want to just have a broke button and just push it. So when a button does go bad, and they do, it puts in a recall to the pedestrian. It almost like the button doesn't exist, and it comes out with that head every cycle.
I see. Well, this has been so insightful. So thank you for answering all these questions.
Keep the questions coming.
I guess my question for the group is, I'm not just trying to get people's temperature here, is it seems to me, at least when someone presses the beg button, that no one should be getting the green to take a left or right turn into that pedestrian. And I don't know if that's a resolution that we put together, but I see this at intersections all across the city, and this is not exclusive to Nashville. Okay? There's no blame to Nashville here. This is true of all cities, but we've already lost people. We lost someone in March for that reason. And it just seems if we can avoid this conflict, and it's not going to be a silver bullet, but it could make a real impact. So I just wanted to see what the group thought.
Yeah, if I can say, I don't know how practical it could be at every intersection, but one particular common case is, an example would be 2nd Avenue when it tees at Union Street, where you have a one-way street, you have to either go right or left, but you're crossing pedestrian traffic. It should either be pedestrian traffic separate from vehicle traffic, because you have the green light for cars, but you also have the walk signal for pedestrian. Every movement is a conflict. One example that the city of Denver did was they changed the green traffic light to be flashing yellow arrows, both left and red, to be obvious, hey, you have to yield here to the pedestrians that are crossing. So something like that, or...
But why do we even have to do that? Why
driver behavior.
Well, driver behavior, but I guess what I'm saying is, why can we not give folks the red if the pedestrian signal is on?
No, I'm saying that's an alternative.
Yeah, that's an alternative.
To that if you don't want to.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
This sounds like a great working meeting topic for this month.
All right.
Okay. Thank you so much. Unless there's any other questions. And with that work session planning agenda, I think we can continue talking about lighting and things like that. Maybe field a list of follow-up questions as well. Because I have whole bunches of questions that I could have asked on how large our coordinated networks are and how all of that works with the controllers and
all of the things, yes.
Loads of things.
You have technical questions.
Did we still have some questions around the crosswalk painting, kind of that topic? Is that...
So, yes and no.
Is that still an open...
It is. Chrissy said last month at last month's working meeting that our single crosswalk painting contractor does not have liquidated damages in their contract that would compel them to repaint sidewalks within X amount of days or months. And that contract runs through 2030. So
It just got re-solicited, so it's 5 years.
5 years. There you go. So someone who might have more of a legal mind and could, I don't know, compel Metro Legal to file an amendment on that, I think would be a worthy ask. So that might be something that we probably, yeah, the lawyer left. So yes, work session planning agenda. I think we could certainly continue that conversation, then also continue discussing potential possibilities for resolutions around pedestrian signal phasing and yeah, things like that. Is there anything else that anybody would particularly like to discuss at this month's? Yes.
I'll keep it under 30 seconds. And this just came up yesterday, but I have been hearing from people in Germantown that when the pedestrian beacons on Jefferson Street at 6th and 7 are activated, Waymos do not stop. I don't know if there are conversations between NDOT and Waymo or not that are ongoing. If there are, it would be great if NDOT would inquire into that and find out if Waymos, because we've had a lot of concerns about those types of beacons. It'd be great to know if Waymos actually have it in their programming to, or do you just doing anything?
Yes,
yeah, please.
Please put those in Hub. I think
You got
there's a specific category for that, and we meet with Waymo, I think, monthly.
Awesome.
And they're aware of that dashboard in Cal, and we share and talk about it. So
Amazing. That's all I need. Thank you.
I hadn't even thought about that.
I hadn't either until that neighbor told me.
All right, wonderful. Kim.
For the work session, Kim was actually showing me some photos, but she had to leave, of course, to get her ride, of some issues related to accessibility along the bike lane on Arthur Ave at Elizabeth Park. And I'll see if I can get the photos from her and bring those to the work session to kind of address that, of the bike lane keeping the access ride from extending to the curb.
Got it.
So.
I think I know what you're talking about. Okay. And we are nearing the end. Finally, Vision Zero highlights. Hal or Christy, do y'all have anything to share? If you do not, that's okay.
You're meeting Monday, right? That's
Yeah, as I say, that's Monday.
Yes.
I was told you have a meeting Monday to discuss stuff, and then.
Yes, it will basically focus around our concerns that were in the resolution that were just passed. So, all right, fantastic. I think that is it for this evening.
I would just like to say I don't think I'm going to be at the next meeting. I'm getting married that weekend, so.
No excuses.
Oh my god.
Well, congratulations.
Congratulations.
I just wanted you guys to say congrats, though.
Yeah.
But
All right. Thank you, everybody. Motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thank y'all.
Thank you.